Welcome to Hubs and Drivers, a podcast for building product marketers sponsored by BLD Marketing. I'm Jeff Donaldson, your host. On today's episode, tapping into the mindset of the millennial homebuyer. Despite rising interest rates, the residential housing market continues to boom, and millennials by far have established themselves as the dominant home buying generation. Now, millennials are defined as people born between the years 1981 and 1996. So when you think about it, that means the youngest millennials are in their mid-20s and the oldest are in their late 30s and early 40s. The National Association of Realtors 2022 Homebuyers and Sellers Trend Report has provided some insight into how millennials think and how they approach that major purchase in their life. Here to break down some of the numbers is Dave Sladack, president of BLD Marketing. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
So what slice of the pie do millennials have when it comes to the prospective home buyer, and how do they compare to other generations?
Millennials are the largest home buying segment in the country. They constitute 43% of all homes purchased, and that continues to grow. Just a year ago in 2021, that was 37%. So that's a 6-point increase in just 1 year.
So they're really growing, and what they do and how they think has a substantial impact on the marketplace in general. So, Dave, what does the report say about these millennials in terms of income, marital status, and number of children? What's that profile look like?
So we tend to have this stereotype, a long, old stereotype that millennials live in their parents' basement. It's no longer true, right? The older millennials especially are becoming career decision makers. They are living in they're looking for step-up homes. Their earning power is increasing. The younger millennials, too. Just a year ago, younger millennials who had one child and owned a home was only 75%. This year, it's 95%. So you're starting to see that younger segment of the generation really start to mature into families and having kids and so forth. It's also important to note, though, that this is the most educated generation ever that we've had in the United States. And with the younger millennials especially, almost half of them have at least a bachelor's degree. So it's a smart group. They're very, very specific with what they want in a home, and they research the heck out of their decisions.
So let's talk about trigger points. What triggers a millennial to consider the search for a house?
The triggers are mainly the transition that they're in, okay? Growing incomes, growing families. So the combination of both of those just suggests that they need to step up with their home buying. The younger millennials are getting, better jobs right now, having their first child, so they're looking for that first home often. The older millennials, they're transitioning into their step-up home.
Yeah, their lifestyle and their life stages of life is changing in
some
some way.
And the other thing that's driving it, of course, is the macro demand, right? So you have low interest rates, and so it's a great time to buy a home, and many of the older millennials especially are stepping up into a much larger space.
Trading up, yeah. Millennials have specific search criteria when it comes to evaluating the purchase of a new home. Talk a little bit about some of the findings in this study when it comes to that.
Yeah, so the traditional factors are always going to be there, right? The quality of the home is still the largest consideration. One that has gone down is the convenience to a job. Just last year, even with COVID, that was still a significant consideration. But now that most of the companies, or a lot of the companies now, have come up with some sort of permanent work from home arrangement, we're starting to see that be a much less consideration. But they're also looking for larger homes, more bedrooms for the growing families that they have. And then I think one of the biggest things is how they use a realtor. And what we're seeing here is, and this has been this way for a while, and it's even more magnified. If you're a realtor, you can't work with a millennial the way you work with maybe a Gen Z or especially a boomer.
Interesting.
They don't want to talk on the phone, okay? So you have to be able to text them and email and so forth. A lot of what you do with them is virtual. But the other thing is they have different expectations of a realtor. They want the realtor to be somebody who's going to provide data and intelligence about the home, about the current homeowners if they're buying an existing home, or maybe the builder, about the community, the school districts, and things like that.
So they have to be smart when they come to the table.
Absolutely.
So what does the survey say about the end result? What type of home do millennials tend to buy?
So the millennials are buying single-family homes. Okay, that's where most of the growth is. You're seeing a real exodus to the suburbs. Previously, what you saw with the younger millennials was a concentration in the urban areas, and that's kind of natural. As you get families, you start to move into the more suburban areas. What we're not seeing is a move to the exurbs. Now, you are seeing that with some of the older generations, like Gen Xers and Boomers, but no, it's the suburbs with the school districts and the access to community that really is being emphasized with the millennials. The other thing you're seeing there is the household prices, right? So the price of a home for a young millennial is averaging a median around $250,000. That's up from $229,000 just a year ago. Wow. And then the square footage for that young millennial is 2,100 square feet, which is up from like 1,650 just a year ago. You look at the older millennials who are buying these step-up homes, their values are averaging about $350,000, and then the square footage is 2,400. So remember, I told you earlier, this is the group that skipped the starter home. These older millennials and went right to like about 2,000 square feet. You can see now they've increased by about 400 feet in their average home.
So there is a lot of data here to digest, but what do you believe are some of the key takeaways from this survey?
Well, I think the biggest thing is they're the largest buying segment that the United States has ever seen. It's a large buying group. They're not done yet. The older segment is just getting into the step-up homes, and the younger segment will be following them shortly. So that's something to consider. You have to pay attention to them, and I think the biggest thing is recognizing that millennials are very different than their previous generations. They want smart tech. They want convenience to communities where they have access, and technology plays a big part in all of that. And then the other side of it is energy performance. Their values are built based on sustainability. Right. You don't always see that in their purchase making or purchase decisions all the time, but certainly it's in their blood, and they want to at the very least, save money on some of the energy performance of their windows and doors and things like that.
So they're predisposed to think about sustainability when they consider the home buying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Dave, thanks very much. Appreciate it. So if you think millennials have a substantial impact as a generation, you'd be right. At about 80 million people, they represent 1/5 of the U.S. population. It makes them the largest living generation. Hey, would you like us to cover a specific topic on Hubs and Drivers? Reach out to us. Email us at info@hubsanddriverspodcast.com. That's info@hubsanddriverspodcast.com. That's all for this edition of Hubs and Drivers. I'm Jeff Donaldson. Thanks for being here. See you next time.